when you allow that little voice to be heard for a moment and you follow it and you do the things it's telling you, the prosperity that opens up on the other. Like, I didn't plan for quantum to come along, right? Happened in an instant. I didn't plan for Gobundance to have an opportunity. Happen in an instant, right? Like, all happened after I left my job.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. And I would like to welcome Jamie Gruber to our show. Jamie was a corporate executive making $400,000 a year before deciding he had enough. After a Gobundance Mastermind, he was able to compress his goal of quitting from 5 to 7 years down to 24 months and doubling his income in that time as well. Jamie is a partner with Quantum Capital and the creator of Emerge Supercharged. He hosts the top 1% podcast, Tribe of Millionaires, and produces volumes of content inspiring people to live their best lives. He believes anyone can achieve lifestyle freedom through clarity, confidence, and most importantly, community. Jamie, welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast.
First off, I love the name, Small Steps, Big Win. That's a great, great name. And secondly, thank you for putting that bio together. I mean, you pieced that all together from your interactions with all the stuff that you've done. So I really appreciate you taking the time and putting that together. That was really good. I got to steal that from you. That was great.
That is quite a bio, by the way. And I am confident that there is a great backstory that goes behind it. So I want you to share what made you decide to leave your W-2, how you got started in Gobundance, and anything in between. Just connect the dots.
Yeah, of course. There was a point in time along the path of this 21-year career with one company, kind of ascending the corporate ladder. There's a point in there somewhere where I decided that I wasn't satisfied. And what I thought I needed was the next level job. So I went all in. I took jobs laterally in the level I was in just to prove myself to the powers that be that I was the next executive, that I was to be the next executive, that I should be promoted. And for some reason in my mind, that was the solution to what ailed me, getting the next level. Like, there was something missing, something I wasn't quite feeling great about. I wasn't loving going to work and every day, other than the fact that I had this goal. And if I can keep going toward that goal and achieve that goal, then I'll be happy. And I did about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years into that sort of push to get to this executive position. The more and more disconnected I felt every day, the more and more I was convinced that once I get it, and when I did get it, that I was going to feel completely whole. Like, that's the level I'm supposed to be at. So I get the job. It moves me from Boston to Michigan. And I always say this, like, probably within 30 days, it was a realization after the shiny newness of the position wore off that, wow, I didn't want this. This isn't what I wanted to begin with. This isn't where I wanted to be to begin with. This wasn't the thing that was, pulling at me and telling me like something's wrong here. Something doesn't feel right here. It wasn't the wrong job. It wasn't the wrong position within the job. It was that what I was doing, the business I was in, the company I was working for, the role I had carved out, the type of work that we did, none of it resonated with who I am, with who I truly am authentically. I guess I just, like many of us, I think, sort of got far astray from the age of, I don't know, 18, 19, 20, when I was convinced that I have to do something to be responsible, to grow up, to get a job. I took a job that seemed along the lines of what I could do for a while and that I was pretty good at, but maybe wasn't necessarily on purpose or in my purpose. I took that job, and as time went on, my authentic self just decided after a while, like, I've had enough. Your ego's been driving the ship toward this position. Now you got the position, and obviously it's not what you wanted. So let me take over for a while. And in that ensued a battle between my ego, which kept winning, and my authentic self, which wanted to take a completely different direction. So I spent, a good year in that battle, which was, manifesting in sleepless nights, some level of depression, anxiety, you name it, right? It wasn't fun. I wasn't present as a parent. I wasn't present as a husband. I wasn't who I wanted to be, but I needed to go through that. I think we all do at certain points, and I'll go through it again, I'm sure. And, to some extent, I'm sure I have in some ways in the time since I've left, but it just sort of kicked me in a direction of saying, okay, look, you've always had this idea that you could be an entrepreneur. And my identity shifted to that. It had shifted to entrepreneur while I still had my job. And the path I started to forge at that point took me toward being an entrepreneur. And one of those stops was, I got to find entrepreneurs to hang out with. If I'm saying that I'm an entrepreneur, even if I'm not yet physically, but at least identity wise, I'm there, I need to be around those folks. So that's where I found Gobundance. I found it through the Bigger Pockets podcast, which is a big real estate podcast. The hosts were members. I jumped on a call with somebody from Gobundance and ended up signing up. And after the first year of getting out of my own way with that membership, I still felt like, oh, maybe I don't belong here. But once I kind of get over myself, it's been the single most, I don't know, leverageable decision that I could point to in me being able to, as you said, go from a 10-year goal to a 2-year reality of quitting the job, moving out of the country, building what I've built so far, and having a lot of fun doing it. I reference community, and specifically for me, that was GoBundance, in giving me the tools, the accountability, and the ability to dream a little bit to achieve what I've achieved so far. And that's kind of the connection between the two.
Are you a different person today than you were like the 20-year-old Jamie or the 30 Jamie? Uh,
Yeah, boy, that's such a good question, because I mean, if you're in the space of personal development, you're constantly, or you should be constantly growing and learning. And I mean, it's like they say with with technology, right? Like technology, when you got the most recent and newest technology, like in a week, the newer releases out, like it's already antiquated. So my answer to that a week, 2, 3 weeks ago might have been yes. I feel like I'm a completely different person. But the more work I do on this, the more I realize, like, I'm not a different person, but I have a much greater sense of awareness of who I am. And that awareness is what serves me to understand how I'm showing up. So you mentioned about going into a Zoom room. Like, one of the things that I've learned about myself is I love going into a setting like that and just feeling off the energy. Like, I don't even want an agenda. I want to go in, have conversations, allow my whatever, my sense of humor or my curiosity to just roll, right? If there's 10, 15, 20 people in the room, let's go. I'll do that. That's great. But the other side of me, like, this is where it's like, even 2, 3 weeks ago, I would have answered this differently. I'm the same person, but I understand now that there is a finiteness to my ability to deliver, or even desire to be in that setting over the course of a given week or month or whatever it may be. So I heard Joe Rogan talk about this. He said, "Look, you have to come at things like with intensity. So if you're going at it 3 days, then you got to bump it up to 5. But going to 7 is actually the opposite, because you need time to be refreshed so that you can bring that enthusiasm in the other 5 days, right? And that's something I've learned about me recently, really, is like, I want to bring it, but I've got to control, for me, like when I'm feeling like this is a chore, like, oh shit, I got to go into this meeting. Let me get in there and like pep up and give them who they expect to get. I know I'm doing it too much and I got to back away. And so when I do appear again in that setting, it is with true desire to be there, because I'm the best version of me in that setting. So am I a different person? No, because I'm all parts of what I was then. I have an ego. I have a sense of humor. I have personality quirks. I have my conditioning. I have my beliefs. I have all of those things. Now the beliefs might be different. The how I leverage my ego might be different. The balancing act I play amongst all those parts of myself, the awareness of who I am, the, I don't know, self-assuredness that you have as you age with just being who you are, like, that's different. But I'm not a different person. And this is why I believe, like, when we talk about, man, you're 40, 45, 50 years old and you wish you could tell your 25-year-old self, I do the same thing, but it really is futile. But when you look forward at 90-year-old you, there's a reason why you can say, I know what my older self would tell me. It's because you aren't any different. But you can project, especially maybe at this age in your 40s and 50s, you can project now, with wisdom, that it's going to change. Like, I see the trajectory and the path that my sense of being is going. So I know who I'm going to be at 90, or at least I have a sense of who I'm going to be at 90. And I know what 90-year-old me would say, right? So
so I was going to ask you, like, what would you tell younger Jamie, knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time and capture yourself at 20, what would you tell yourself?
that you're a kid, that you have time, that there's nowhere to be, there's no place to be, there's nothing that you need to do. Go.
You wouldn't do anything differently then?
I wouldn't do anything differently. Well, there's two different things. So if I were to go back to 20-year-old me and give advice, if I had that ability and 20-year-old me wanted the advice, I would give 20-year-old me the advice to stop trying to push to get the job and marry the girl and get the house. Like, you're only 20. You're going to only be 30. You're going to only be 35, right? Like, you're young. You're going to be young for a long time. So go do the things that are on your heart. Follow your authentic voice, that little voice that pops up, follow it, because as time goes on, you're going to have, get married, have kids, whatever. That stuff might happen in the future. And if it does create some different complexities in your life that you have to work around. So go and enjoy and test life now. But I don't regret what I did. I don't believe in the word regret. I think that whatever our journey is, our journey is. And for me, my journey forced me to be 21 years in this corporate career to come to the realization that it wasn't for me at that point. Like, do I wish in some way that, I was like some of these folks who figure it out at 25 or 18 or 33? Sure. But I didn't. So no, I don't have any regrets and I wouldn't do anything differently. But if I were giving the advice, the core of the advice would be you're way too young to be worrying about the things you're worrying about right now. Just simmer down, relax, go backpack Europe, go to Hollywood and try to be an actor for a year and then move to Seattle and throw fish. Like just go enjoy life and test it all before you start thinking you need to be settled in.
Do something crazy without a constraint. That's what I would tell myself, because I think what happens when we're younger, and you mentioned it before when you were 17, 18, you're like, "Oh, I gotta go figure out what the hell I'm gonna do with my life." And, you don't have to have your shit, you're right, you don't have to have your shit together. You know what, did you have a turning point at some point in your W-2 where you had that aha moment where it's like, "Oh, crap, I don't wanna do this for the rest of my life?" And or was it more of a gradual coming to a realization?
I don't think I had a moment in deciding that this isn't what I want to do in the rest of my with the rest of my life. That was a bit more gradual. I had a moment of when I knew I was going to quit. That was definitive. I can remember the date and the time kind of thing. But no, I don't have there wasn't like okay, this isn't for me long term. I need to pivot. It was sort of like yeah, something feels like maybe I could do something outside of this. But even if I don't, God forbid my company tells me in 7 years, like, you're gone, we don't need you anymore. At least I will have built something that pays me where I'm not panicked to maybe go get another job. Like, it was more like a gradual thought process. And then at a certain point, it was like, well, wait a minute, maybe I could do something at some point without a job. Like maybe I could be a full-time entrepreneur. But then the moment, yeah, that was February 1st, 2021. I remember that date.
How'd you feel?
Surprisingly light, like extremely, not even relieved. It wasn't like it was just sort of, there was no questioning it. It just felt like the right next move. Like, duh. In fact, from that moment, I didn't resign for what, about 40 days, 45 days. Cause I was away for a month and then I came back and went away for a week. And then I came back and resigned after that week away. The month away was definitely like the beginning of like, okay, I'm just going to be here. It was a family trip that I took to Florida. It was in COVID. So I had my job, but we could be anywhere. So we went down there. But on that month, I was like, all right, I'm just going to kind of try to be here or whatever. But in my head, definitely, I was like planning and thinking, but I didn't get anxious about the idea. Like it didn't even occur to me for a second to be nervous about it until 2 days before I resigned on March 12th is when I resigned. So March 10th. So from February 1st to March 10th, I felt I was weirded out by how unworried I was about what I was about to do, how sure I was and how unworried I was. And it took until 2 days before for me to feel a sense of worry or like, whoa, this is real all of a sudden, right? Like any anxiety whatsoever, I only felt 2 days before I actually quit.
Oh, wow. And then the day of, did the anxiety get worse the day after you quit, or did it start,
That's a
what
great
what
question
was
too. I
the
love this.
24 hours? It's like you
Yeah.
you quit your job,
Yep.
capture that. I walk in, I hand my boss the letter. Okay.
Well, it was
So
COVID.
at that oh, it was
There's
COVID. So
no walking in
couldn't even,
anywhere, but
yeah, you could. Yeah,
but
yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're
I
right.
I'll
You're right.
capture this. I'll capture this. I'll capture this. So yeah, it was like 2 days before, so this would have been a Wednesday. Wednesday, I woke up and I felt like, "Oof, it's 2 days from now." Like, a few people I knew, but, like, inside the job, but other than that, no. And then trying to talk to my wife about it in that regard, at that point, when I already said to her, like, "We're doing it," kinda told her the plan, she was on board, right? So now I'm kinda going to her with my worry, and to her, it was like, "Well, I don't get it." Like, so she just sort of like, it's no big deal. We'll figure it out." But for me, I'm like, no, I need to feel better about this. So that was like the 2 days leading up. And finally Thursday night. So all day Wednesday, I'm in this space. Wednesday night, I'm like, it's funny. I never thought I wasn't going to quit, but it was just like, what am I not thinking about? This, that, and the other. I had this anxiety. So Thursday evening, finally, my wife, like allowed us to have the conversation. Like, she's like, oh, you're really starting to feel nervous. I get it. And we talked it out. And it was like, oh, I feel great. Okay, cool. Went to bed, no problem. Woke up that morning, no problem, ready to give my boss notice the next day on Friday morning. So 8 a.m. comes around and I was like, you know what? I'll do it at 10. So I'm gonna wait till 10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock rolls around. I'm like, you know what? I got something else I got to take care of right now. At noon, perfect. Noon will be great. And like 5 minutes later, she sent an email to me and my two other peers and said, "Hey guys, heads up, I'm leaving at noon today. I got something going on with my daughter." I'm like, "Oh man, I gotta do it now. I gotta do it now." So we used Teams, kind of like Microsoft Teams. So I typed her because I'm in my house, right? I typed up a quick thing. "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" And then I was like ready to hit the go button or enter or whatever, and I just kind of was like frozen there for a minute, right? Like my hand wouldn't hit the button, and I remember sitting in that moment and kind of like closing my eyes and going like, what's going on? And honestly, I went through this sort of like zoom back to young me and all the way back forward, like in like a minute, and it was like, holy crap, like you're about to maybe do something that you view as not pleasing to her. And I went back to fourth grade. I went back to being bullied, all in this weird minute of me standing there with my hand hovering over the return key to hit this, "Hey, can we talk" note in Teams. I hadn't sent it. I'm just thinking about this and I'm like, wow, this is all like a conditioning thing. Like I'm literally nervous about this because I feel like I'm going to make her upset. And that makes me upset to think I'm not going to please her. And I just opened my eyes and hit the button.
Like, okay, so now you go, you hit the button. And then what happened?
Nothing. She went silent for like 5 minutes, and it was the longest 5 minutes in the history of 5 minutes. And this was probably like 10:30 now. And again, she's leaving at noon, and maybe she's gonna jump out early. I don't know. So I'm like, I gotta talk to her. So I just called her. I picked up the phone and called her. She said she hadn't seen the message yet, which I don't know if she did or didn't. And it was a 2 minute conversation. It was one of those things like she was surprised, but she wasn't shocked, or she was maybe like, oh, I knew it was a matter of when, not if kind of thing. Cause she knew I was doing, things on the side. She knew I had like a real estate portfolio and that kind of thing. So she knew it was going to come at some point. And it was like, oh, okay. And then I just said, "Hey, look, I know we had like a big, like twice a year milestone event coming up that like the department's heads have to be in charge of in like a month." And I said, "I'll stay through that just because I've done all the work for the last 11 months. I'll stay through that if you want me to." She's like, "Yeah, that'd be great if you did." And so I stayed. It ended up being 3.5 more weeks. And then after we kind of did that thing was my last day. So it was April 9th, 2021 was my official last day at my job.
Now, did that conversation go the way you thought it was gonna go, or did it go like? Because sometimes when you're getting ready to do something that's really hard, don't you, like, go through the conversation in your mind ahead of time? It's like, "This is what I'm gonna say. This is what I think she's gonna say, but she didn't say that." Like, you play it out. I know I do that if I have something coming up that I know I have to do. It's like, did it go the way you thought?
I do typically too, but to be honest with you, no, I didn't really have it was like I just knew I was quitting. Like it was like there was nothing that was going to be said or done that was going to change that. After the fact, I'll admit, I did kind of sit back and wonder, like, she didn't like make a play to keep me. So
Did your ego kick in at that point and say, "Oh, they don't really want like, I'm not as wanted as I thought I was going to be."
that's a great question, Sue. Because yes, my ego definitely flared up for a moment of like, well, what the hell? Like, because I've been in other situations where, I've had, competition for me within that company, right? But this it wasn't. But at the same time, like maybe this is more the authentic self popping in and kind of giving perspective on it. But what I also knew immediately after that was like if I were on the other end of that line hearing me, it's like, all right, this guy knows what he's putting down. He knows how much money he makes. He knows what kind of equity he's letting go of. I mean, this isn't a decision he arrives at lightly. It's like, and he's not going to a competitor. It's not like he's going to do the same job at State Farm or whatever the case may be, right? So it's like he's leaving to pursue a life that he wants to pursue. Like I've been on the other end of that as an employer, in a corporate environment. Like I've had people leave to pursue things, and I remember feeling like some sense of like that's scary as hell, but good for you. But there was definitely a like I remember feeling, and I can imagine she did as well. Like, well, there's no way I'm going to change this. There's no point, right? Like they are sure of what they want.
Yeah, you already made up your mind at that point. Yeah. And to your point, just to make sure I'm following you correctly, you had a plan. You didn't just wake up one morning or a month earlier and go, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do." Right? Because a lot of times people think about, "Oh, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going and then and then there's silence, the crickets. It's like, well, okay, you're going to quit your job. Then what are you going to do? And they look at you like the deer in the headlights and go, well, I'm not quite sure. So, what do you have like a little bit of advice for those who are thinking, other than what we talked about before, about leaving their W-2s, other than, don't just leave and have nothing to go to? Would there be anything else you'd want to add to that? I mean, because it makes perfect sense. You don't want to just drop off and say, okay, and get up the next morning and go, oh, now what am I going to do with my life? Right.
Yeah. So if you want to get tactical, I would say if you've got a year saved up, 6 months to a year saved up, if you've got, say, 50% of your expenses covered by something other than your day job and something that you've built to run toward, as I talked about before, I think if you're in that stat category, if that's the triad that you have, a 6 months to a year saved, 50% of your expenses covered, and something that you can build toward, then I think you're in a position where you should be thinking about walking. Even with this economy and all that stuff, I think you're in a position where you should think about walking. Because what you don't know, the other piece of advice is when you surrender, when you put down the thing that's heavy, when you allow yourself, like that little voice that flares up, like I said, that gets beat down by all the conditioning of life, when you allow that little voice to be heard for a moment and you follow it and you do the things it's telling you, the prosperity that opens up on the other. Like, I didn't plan for quantum to come along, right? Happened in an instant. I didn't plan for Gobundance to have an opportunity. Happen in an instant, right? Like, all happened after I left my job. So, the struggle though is, even for me, like, okay, well, if I start to create a new 20% and put down some things that have become my 80%, and that might mean I'm putting down some income streams. Am I going to just follow my own process here of have some money saved, have some expense, money, or, have your expenses covered, if you will, by everything else that you've got going on, and then leap and understand that there's something there that will conspire to serve you if you're listening to your authenticity. So I think the advice I would give is there: 50% expenses, 6 months to a year saved, and something to run toward. You're in the category of I can quit my job. And then you have to have a sense of, by doing so and surrendering to this voice that you have, that prosperity will enter your life, that the things that you need will be there. It may not be like, it's not going to be like you, oh, I step and I always land, like a lily pad falls under my foot every time. Like, you'll step in water, but overall, you'll have the ability to climb your way out of it. You'll have options coming to you that you just can't foresee. So you just have to be at peace with this, whatever that is, tapping into the universe or whatever it might be. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I think, well, I'm glad you brought up the different components, the tactical, as you said, to make sure you've got that savings in the bank, you've got a little bit of that safety net. I think those are the things that we need to keep in mind. And I would add one more thing. If you can, surround yourself with people who are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you, so that you've got people you can lean on and say, okay, I'm getting ready to take this. Oh, you've done this before. Okay. I think there's that, as you said, that sense of community. And I can attest to that. Me personally has grown in leaps and bounds because of the community that I'm around and that I'm involved in. So I would add that as your fourth prong.
You said it at the jump in my bio, right? There's the 3 C's I always talk about, right? You got to get clarity, you got to build confidence, but the way to ensure that your clarity and you stay on task with your clarity, that your confidence is built, is you need to have, to your point, you absolutely, that third C, the community surrounding you. Like, if you want to be in great shape, you find people and you hang out with people in great shape. If you want to be a pilot, you go hang out with pilots, right? Like, it's the same thing. If you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be a business owner, if you want to be a real estate investor, you got to find those people. And in this day and age, to me, the most efficient and effective way is, there are plenty of communities you could drop a little bit of your hard-earned money on, and they're there for you. You don't have to go out and find them and try to put them together yourself. The efficiency, like, I pay 10, 12 grand a year for GoBundance for that reason. Of course, I want accountability and I want community.
You had a next chapter. Talk a little bit about what your next chapter was and how that came about.
Right. Yeah. No, I always say that, like, you don't want to run from something, you want to run towards something, right? So if you just quit to get away from the job, it'll feel great for a minute, but then it's like, okay, now what? And people could still find their way. It's not like you can't do that, but I think way more sustainable is having something to run toward.
Well, you had a family and kids too, so it's not like you had responsibilities as well. So, yeah.
Correct. Yep. Wife, kids. Wife doesn't work or didn't work at the time, right? So yeah, I was the only income earner. So yeah, it's funny you talk about that, like, 'cause I mentioned about the advice I give I would give to my 20-year-old self would be like, go do things, go try things. Like we don't allow ourselves that at 35 and 40 because we're like too mature or too old or it's too late for some reason. But that's what I did. So when I started, it was like real estate makes sense. So I'm going to start buying real estate. So I did. I took a 401k loan out to buy my first two burrs, two duplexes. So I bought these two properties actually as I got the job. It's funny, like how you can now look back and say, oh, there was something in me. There's a little voice telling me buy real estate, even while I was getting and applying for the executive job. Like that was happening at the same time. So I bought these two duplexes. We literally signed to close on them in New York a week before we moved to Michigan. We had obviously been in due diligence for a while. So finding them and putting them under contract predated me applying for and getting the job in Michigan, but they kind of happened at the same time. So I had these two burrs, took out again a 401k loan to kind of put do the work on them and do all of that stuff. And then I was like, I joined Gobundance and I found, you know what, multifamily is a good play. And I went into a 16 unit property with a couple of partners and we bought that. And then I got a 22 unit with a few other partners and bought that. And so it was like, okay, I'm starting to build this real estate thing, which is what I thought my exit plan would be all about. But again, the thing in me that I really enjoyed in real estate was the interactive part, was the talking through how excited I was about this stuff, right? So I started a networking group. So in that networking group, a meetup, if you will, now it was like, oh, I'm really having fun putting these events together. Like I care more about that and the quality of what we're doing on the meetup than I do about the real estate, to be honest with you. And so I started to do that. And then that became a natural kind of kick into social media. Like I had a Facebook group, and in that Facebook group, because it was private and my boss couldn't see it, and you know what I mean? Like I wasn't like just out there saying I'm doing something outside of my job, everybody. I was inside a Facebook group, and in that Facebook group, I was doing Facebook lives and I was putting out content. I was engaging and kind of learning what Gary Vee talks about, like the social end of social media, like just going back and forth with people and trying to add value. So that led to me being kind of a brand within the multifamily space. And even more specifically, I was being asked to speak about how to build a network within multifamily or how to build a meetup. Bigger Pockets asked me to come on to talk about that.
How'd that make you feel when Bigger Pockets approached you? Because they're big, like, that's a big deal. I mean, did it feed the ego? It's like, "Oh, these people want me."
It actually was so anyway, so all let me I'll cap this off and I'll get to that because that's a great question. But so anyway, so I started doing all these things, and then it was like I had an opportunity to build Emerge. I took that on and built that, and that became a business. And then yeah, Bigger Pockets came because I'm in GoBundance. Brandon Turner's in GoBundance, and at a certain point, he emailed me. I remember messaging him, and he emailed me. He's like, "Hey, I thought you had been on the Bigger Pockets podcast already. My bad. You should come on." Like he's like, I can't guarantee it. The producer makes the decision, but just tell him, or I'll tell him that I want you on. So then, like a week later, I got the email like, "Hey, Jamie, we're going to book you." So end of 2020, I recorded it, and in January 2021, it released like a week before I made that drive to Florida. So that happened. Emerge was like the first run of Emerge was wrapping up at that exact same time as well, and all of that together led to me going to Florida with the idea of quitting my job, right? So it all kind of I don't know, aligned around the same time. So Bigger Pockets was a big catalyst. And yeah, being on it was an honor, but sure my ego was stroked 100%.
Was Emerge your baby, or was Emerge somebody else's idea, and then they thought that, "Hey, Jamie would be really good at this." How did Emerge emerge?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. So, GoBundance had the idea that they wanted to have they call it like a junior varsity, like a place where, hey, we love GoBundance, but yeah, we don't qualify yet, like those folks, right? So they had these names, Emerge, Ascend, but they didn't have any framework or structure. They were just like, we want to do something, Emerge, Ascend Division, something like that. And they kind of said, do you want to make it? I said, sure. So I decided, okay, Emerge is going to be at the time a course. Ascend is going to be a community, and then you graduate from one to the other. And I remember thinking like 12 weeks feels right. We'll do a 12-week course. We'll use the book Tribe of Millionaires. I want to leverage the principles that I've learned in quitting and now like going toward quitting my job, which is, how to create an effective vision, how to set effective goals, how to put plans in place and habits, and how to leverage community and all of that stuff. So we built that 12 weeks. I pre-sold, I think, 30 courses, 30 of the Emerge course to people so we could kind of run people through it and get their feedback and build it. And we did that. That launched in October of 2020. They graduated end of January, again, as Bigger Pockets released and as I'm going down to Florida. So all of that happened at the same time. And the results people were giving me from Emerge, they were like, oh my God, I've accomplished this, I've accomplished that. Thank God I had this, thank God I had that. So when I got to the point of like, I'm going to quit my job, to your point, it was like, okay, I've got some money saved. I wasn't taking any income from my real estate, but I was like literally driving in the car scratching this out. It's not like I wrote it down. Right? I'm like, all right, I could take this much from that property. I could take this much from that property. I can get 35 to 4,000 a month out of my portfolio if I wanted to. If I'm not gonna be able to save anything, right? Like I've got some reserves, but I can take that if I needed. But I got 120 grand in the bank. So that's, I know, a year's worth of expenses if I look at it that way, which burns longer if I'm taking 4,000 a month in passive income. And then I'm like, but the big thing is I've got this emerge ascend thing that I really believe we can do something with. So that was sort of like, I've got my cushion, I've got some income coming in, didn't cover my expenses, but then I've got a belief in what I've built, and I just wanted to go all in on that. And that was that. Yeah.
How did that make you feel when you came to that realization that you've got a little bit of that cushion there?
You know, it was I don't know what made me feel. It's a good question. Like I remember not realizing that I had the cushion until I had the quiet time to think about the fact that I had the cushion. It was almost like a surprise, I guess, like, well shit, I guess I have this. But in my mind it's like, well, it's allocated to invest this and some is for, but it's like, but I have it. Like I have that cash on hand. This isn't retirement accounts or anything, like just cash, right? So if I needed to, I could tap it. So it made me feel, I guess, kind of empowered because it was like, well, I in a year, God, I could do a lot in a year. Like a year, such a, I mean, as you get older, the year's not long, but it is long at the same time, right? Like it's like that's such a long time to invest all of my time not at my job in doing something that I'm fully focused on. I can't imagine how I don't at least have. I mean, maybe it's not for me, but I'll know, and I will have taken my shot, right? Like I won't ever look back and say I didn't try. So that was kind of the thought when I went at it. But yeah, it was just sort of, honestly, it was a bit of like an unemotional realization, like, okay, this much a month, this much in savings, that gives me a year. Yeah, I think I could do it. And that was it.
I wanna go back to, like, the first couple weeks after you quit your job. Did you was it like, what was going on? Some people, like, they say when they go into retirement, they go crazy after a couple of weeks, they're like, they just go back to their old job after they retire because they just can't take it. I'm just curious, did you miss it?
Yeah, if you haven't built something to run toward, then yeah, I probably would have gone crazy. Um, if I had to, like I said, if I had to give advice to my younger self even 2 years ago, again, I don't regret anything because I don't believe in that, but it would be take 2, 3, 4 months off. Just don't do anything for 2, 3 months. Just read, go to the gym, chill. Just like get down to like a base level of decompression. Just because you don't know when you're going to have that time to reset again, right? So let yourself fully reset. I didn't do that. And a lot of people don't, but a lot of people share this experience. In the 2 weeks after I left, now I put away a 50-hour a week job and all of the stress and everything else that comes with it, right? So you think, oh, I got all this free time. In those 2 weeks, and from that point forward, I had never been busier. And the stuff that came in, here comes quantum capital. Hey, you don't have your job. Like, we'd love to partner with you and have you come in and be a general partner and do marketing and investor relations. So that became something, right? GoBundance called and they're like, hey, we got all these people that want to join GoBundance. If you get on a phone call with them and can get them to join, like we'll pay you. And that was like 18, 20 grand my first month. So it was like, wow. And it wasn't work. It was like, let me get on a call with a bunch of these guys and have good conversations. I met a bunch of guys that way. And so, yeah, so it was busy. It was really busy the first few weeks after.
It feeds into your desire to communicate with people and be around people, I would think. Yeah, it just kinda leaned into so you left something that wasn't fulfilling in what your authentic self and found and continued to find where your authentic self is. I would imagine it doesn't feel like a job, does it?
No, no, no. But like I said, what's funny is when you leave that corporate career and it's 21 years or whatever, and this is the big thing that blocked me for a long time was, wait a minute, okay, if I'm gonna put all this down, this that I built, right, then I gotta know what I'm gonna do for, like, maybe we're not quite saying it this way, but like for the equal amount of time now. So if it was 21 years or 16 years, then for the next 21 years or for the next 16 years, right? Like, because that's our life. You go to school for 13 years, college for 4. Like that's the short porch. That's the quick one, 4 years. But then it's career, right? So if I'm going to put career down, I got to know what's the next career, right? But what I've learned is that the rate and pace of change and adjustment that you're going to make, and like you said, continuing to lean into who you are authentically, it is rapidly accelerated when you don't have a day job. in order to kind of keep you within the box or the confines of what that day job's supposed to be. So even now, you know, when I left my job, if you look at like Pareto's principle, right? The 20% of the activities that got me 80% of the results would have been, you know, get on one-on-one calls with people. Have you know, do individual sales calls on the Emerge program, those sorts of things, right? That's like the 20% activity that got me 80% of the results. But in the last 2 years, as time's gone by, it's shifted to where like, no, well, that is too, like, I can't do one-on-one time as much anymore. That's becoming 80%. That gets me 20% of the results. So now it became like one to more or one to many, right? So that's where getting on a podcast, honestly, is a good one-to-one experience because I can leverage it for content. I can put things out in the world. You know, like it gives me reach one to many. So that's like the new 20% getting me 80% of the results. And I'm at this bridge now where honestly, like one to many has to become one to millions. Like that's and it's not because of like ego or anything. It's just, well, in order for me to continue to stay in my authenticity, keep doing what I love, and for it to be fulfilling for me, then I need to find, not even find, but I need to align with the areas of my life that give me the most reach. So for me right now, podcasting is what I love the most. I love doing it. It's not the most directly monetizable. Like there's a downstream of the funnel that you monetize. Like people buy your course, they buy your community, that sort of thing. But the podcast isn't going to make you a ton of money, if that makes sense. But it's what I'm called to. And so that message of being one to millions is the 20% of stuff I need to be doing to get me 80% of the results. And things like group calls or whatever are somewhere in between now. They're in that 20 still, but I could see where over time they become a little bit more in that 80, or only a certain amount of those or certain types of those are going to be where I go. So my point in saying that is, yes, fully in my authenticity. I feel like I'm doing the things that serve me and make me feel great and light me up. But even within that, it's amazing how quickly post W-2, and I've heard this from a lot of people, that evolution takes place. Like whatever you're doing that's giving you the 20% that's giving you the 80% of the results, very quickly that 20 becomes your 80 and you got to come up with a new 20, and then so on and so forth. It's the what got you here isn't going to get you there sort of principle.
Right, right. What got you from 0 to 1 isn't gonna get you from 1 to 2. You've gotta change something. Yeah. Did you expect the amount of growth in and how rapid it grew between leaving your W-2 to where you are today?
No, no, you know, I didn't. I wasn't
What
sure.
did you expect?
I had a desire, what I wanted, but then to watch it actually, like the biggest thing that really made me realize, like, oh, this is a thing, is when we sold out our first event. You know, like when we had an event and people actually bought, like, okay, they bought the course. Some of them came around and stayed for what was Ascend at the time, kind of the mastermind. Now it's all in one called Emerge Supercharged. But when people like on top of that bought the event, that's when it was like, oh wow, like this is valuable. People are getting a lot of value out of this. So I don't know if what I wanted was to get to a place where we had, you know, I forget, 20 new people a month, and then a certain amount of those converting. I forget what the numbers were back then, in the business of Emerge, if you will. Um, but yeah, the reality of it has been, yeah, it's been a great, it's been on a great growth trajectory. And more than that, like, you know, it's just, it's taught me a lot about me as an entrepreneur. It's taught me a lot about what people need. And I just see, like today, one of the guys posted in there, I don't know if you saw it yet, but that he closed on a new business acquisition, right? Like I know that person, I know where he started and where he is now and his whole story in between. And it's like, that's exactly like he had lost his nerve so many times, but for those he surrounded himself with in Emerge, picking him up and holding him accountable to being what he wants to be and doing what he wants to do. So to see it all come to fruition for me, like that's the part that I guess I didn't truly believe was possible. Like, wow. And the cool part is like I don't have anything to do with that personally, right? Like all I did was create it. Like him and his pod got together. I gave you the room to go in, right? But then in that room, they did something with it. That is really cool to me. So no, I don't think I ever expected that.
You know what? I would slightly disagree with you. I think you did have something to do with it as far as helping those because I've been in those Emerge rooms, I've been on those calls. I joined Emerge last October 2022. And it's not just the people who were in the room when we would do those calls, but you came on in the beginning and you encouraged each of us and you had a story, you had something behind it. So I would say let your ego be stoked a little bit that you do have something. I mean, you did have a contributing factor to that. And I think that's one of the great things. I mean, I'm a teacher by trade, and teachers, you have that epiphany, the ego moment when you see somebody grow. When they go from having no idea to some idea, and any teacher can relate to that, because when you start off with a classroom of kids in September that know nothing, and by the end of the year they've learned and they've gained all this over the course of the year. I think they did the work, but you had to do something along with it. You have this quote on your website. I want to read it here. It says, "I just want to inspire and motivate people to live their absolute best life. It's all here for you to take, execute, and watch this one life you get to change dramatically." End quote. Out of that quote, what are some of the ways you use Emerge Supercharged to accomplish that?
To accomplish motivating, inspiring others to get there. Um, that's a great question. I would say that I've always said this: proximity is absolute power. Being around people that represent who you're trying to become or the results that you're trying to achieve or whatever the case may be, is number one. So, do we have content? Yes, I think it's really good content. Do we have education? Yes, I think it's really good education on wealth, on health, on whatever it might be. Do we have facilitated connections? Absolutely. Accountability calls, pods, all that good stuff. Do we have topic based conversations? Yes, micro tribes, right? Like those are the features that sell. But to your point, how do I leverage Emerge is when we do those trainings, I bring in my network. So I bring in, Gobundance members, millionaires on the men's and women's side to come in and teach what they've done to build multi-million dollar businesses, or, achieve levels of relationship success in a scaling, growing, business or whatever it might be. Right. So I think what I've tried to do with Emerge in order to accomplish that is not be the center of it all. Like my gift is connection, my gift is facilitation. So Emerge is a representation of those two things. I bring in people to be connected to those that are part of Emerge, those that invested in themselves and invested in this community that I had the privilege of putting together. And then I leverage my ability to facilitate discussion, to facilitate people that get on those first accountability calls and don't want to raise their hand or don't want to speak, and get them, draw them out, that sort of thing. So I use Emerge to use my gift of facilitation, my gift of connection, to bring all of that in and hopefully get people unstuck. The guy, Josh, that bought that business, I mean, very introverted, which is fine, but it takes something a little extra for you to stand out in a community like Emerge if you are introverted. And just being with him and encouraging him and inspiring him to the point where he said, you know what, I set a goal that on every proximity call or millionaire case study or whatever it is, I am going to ask a question. I'm going to ask a question on every one of them. I'm going to raise my hand and I'm going to come up on screen and be featured on screen in front of 40, 50, 80, 100 people, whatever it is, and ask the question, because I need to do that to challenge myself. And so to be there to encourage that and facilitate that is what I've tried to do with Emerge. And I think that's what, at the end of the day, is my complete role in there, is to be, we kept talking about at the beginning, like, what do we call me? Like, your millionaire connector. Like, great, like, go with that. So that's what I really feel my role is, though. Like,
And to your point about you being a facilitator and making things far reaching, from my own experience, I've seen that. So I came into Emerge, like I said, in October. I myself also introverted, afraid to try anything, to do anything at all. And
look at you now.
I know. Well, I have to tell you real quick the story behind this. And so when we join Emerge, I think it's the first week or the second week, we have to write down what our 5-year vision is. And I never ever thought of doing anything like that before. I mean, Emerge, for me to go through the 12 weeks, was a complete 100% mind shift. I mean, I was doing things that no one ever challenged me on. I had no idea, like, what's a 5-year vision? Why would you want one of those? Although I spent a good number of my years wandering through life, going from job to job, not really finding, like you said, my authentic self. So I write down this 5-year vision, And then in the same, like, going through the motions every week, I see Dawn with Diego. Thursday morning, I'm gonna get on these calls with Diego, and I did that, I guess, starting in November. December goes by, and I wound up in a mastermind that he had produced and had Matt King on, and it was a live mastermind. I don't even know, like, I got an email, and I'm like, "Okay," it was Tuesday night. I'm like, "Okay, I'll go to this mastermind. Matt King's there. I know who Matt King is." And Matt was taking people through your big, hairy, audacious goal. But before you got there, you had to at least create a vision. So there were many people on the call. They didn't know what a vision was. They're walking them through a vision. And I already had mine. And I'm sitting there going, gosh, you can't come up with a 5-year vision in 5 minutes. Like, you just can't do it. So I pulled up my vision from Emerge that I wrote in October. And I figured, well, while there was quiet time, I'll read it over. Well, the next thing I know, Diego goes, "I'm gonna call on somebody to read their vision." And you hear crickets. And he goes, "I'm gonna call on somebody." He goes, Sue Saller, I want you to read your vision." And at that moment, I went, "Holy shit, did he just say my name? Okay, all right." And see, he had recognized my name because I was on those Dawn with Diego's, and that's why he kind of picked me out. So I start reading my vision. I'm as nervous as heck. And I'm like, and Matt King's like, "Yeah, read your vision." Right. So I go through, I fast forward, I read my vision, I get down to the end. And within my vision was to create a website for educating kids. And the other was a podcast. Now, honestly, Jamie, I completely forgot I had written that in my vision. And Matt King goes to me, he says, "So, Sue, what part of your vision came true already?" And I went, uh, uh, I started a podcast." He goes, "Good for you." Well, the next thing I know, Diego's like, "Where's the link? Put the link to your podcast." I'm like, "Dude, I have no idea. Like, I don't even know where my podcast is." I'm like, "I just launched it like 3 days or a week before. It was less than a week." And next thing I know, Diego puts my podcast up on the screen as well. And I went, "Oh, wow. Okay, the power of connection and getting out of your comfort zone and being forced to find who your authentic self is and face these questions." You really don't realize how many people you reach, until you start hearing those stories. And that was one of the reasons for doing the Small Steps Big Wins podcast. Was there are so many stories coming out of Emerge of people who are literally transforming their lives in a matter of months, and they all have this common thread of, "I didn't realize I could do this until I connected, or until I was challenged to do this, or I was," like, they just didn't know they had it in them. Same thing with me.
No, it's been amazing. Like, for me, honestly, that is the hearing that what you just said, and seeing a post like I saw with Josh today and all of that just before we got on this call. Like, that's the stuff. That's the stuff that makes me, I don't know, just light up. Like, you know what? That feels like purpose. Who knows what happens in the next year, 2, 3, 5, 4, 5 years, but that impact will last. And to have had a small part of that, it's way more meaningful for me then, and again, it's not like the people at my old job or whatever and them getting to another level isn't meaningful, but I didn't care about the context of that work enough to care about, whether people like, I wouldn't want to push people into that work because I didn't love that work. I want people to be pushed into what I do now because I love what I do now. So to see that connection is really, really cool for sure.
Yeah, and your passion comes through. I mean, there's no question when you've been on stage with people like Jesse Itzler, or when you interviewed David Green, there is an authentic self of you that comes through, that you really want to dig underneath the layers. You really want to ask those questions that make people think. And you're just so comfortable to draw people out to get them to talk about who they are. So, and like I said, there's an energy about you. So I'm just curious. So what drives you today? Like, you have a ton of enthusiasm. There's an energy when you walk in the room. I personally can't wait to meet you in Austin. Like I said, you have energy coming through on a video call like this. I can't imagine what it's going to be like in person. So what sustains that?
I think it's simply when you do something that feels right, like leaving your job, despite the, I don't know if it's perceived, real, whatever risk to that, right? Like, wow, it's a big salary, it's big income, equity, the whole thing you're kind of putting down. And then you feel good and you start to see the outcomes of your life be what they are. So, my vision back then was to travel 3 months a year with my family, right? That was one of the parts of my vision. I want to travel 3 months a year with my family anywhere we want to go. So to have moved to the Dominican, for instance, for a year and to wake up every day, I'm looking right now outside of, I mean, I live in Michigan most of the year, or not most, I've lived in Michigan before. So it's gray and cold right now. So it's blue skies, 83 degrees, beautiful weather outside. And it's like, wow, we did this, but we did this by empowering other people. So it's this like self-fulfilling circle, right? So it's like, okay, well, what I'm supposed to do, I thought, was go do this work to make this money so that one day I could live like the way I want to live, right? I could take that money, retire, live the way I want to live. I was like, well, let me do that now. And that could create some significant financial risk, but it's like, okay, I did it. And then by doing it, there's financial gain. And then from that financial gain, it allows me to have the life I want. And then that life I want inspires other people to go for that, kind of back around the circle, right? Like other people want to go for that. So they reach out to me and I'm like, great, let me explain it in whatever fashion I can through Emerge, through a podcast, whatever. So it's like I get to talk about like, yeah, you could do this too, right? Inspiring and motivating others to live their best life, my purpose. And then that leads to, further ability to financially secure myself. And that leads to I have a clearly defined purpose. I lean into it. And by leaning into it so far, it's provided a lifestyle and a level of security for my family above and beyond even what my job had. Like I don't know what the next 20 years are. So if you can't live in that world of what's the next 20 years going to be, then that's something that you have to kind of, deal with for yourself. But meaning not you, but anybody that's listening. But yeah, it's this self-fulfilling prophecy or cycle that kind of keeps rolling. So I guess it's like imagine if you love baseball and then one day you realize like, wow, by me playing baseball, people like it. And I actually make money playing baseball. So let me keep playing baseball and then I make more money. But you know what I mean? Like it's actually working and people are entertained by it and they want to meet me and they want, like it's like that, right? That's kind of what I get to do. Like this is my I got drafted into the NFL type of thing. It's like I get to be me.
Yeah, they say you arrive when your job is your vacation, where you get to that point where you can't tell the difference between doing something you really wanna do and doing something you have to do.
The challenge, though, and if I'm being completely honest, is when you go into what's the news, like oh my god, the economy, the transition, all these different things that are happening, all that stuff. When you go into that, like you do clench a bit, like okay, let me figure out how do I make sure I make more money. And so like there's been at times for me an inclination to like okay, double down on the money making, like push on the money making, and it's like what, that's ego because ego wants to have money to keep the story going, right? But the authenticity of me or the authentic side of me or the self or whatever it is saying, actually, if you're true to service, which I believe I am, then this is the time to provide more. So that's where the newsletter was born out of. I do a newsletter every week, right? That's where some of the content I'm putting out, some of the other things that we're working on right now are like, hey, people are scared, people are worried. The worst thing I can do is try to like feed into that or dig into that or like tighten up my shoulders and try. I know you're worried, but I got to make money. No, you're worried. Let me help you. Let me provide more value. Let me provide more content, whatever it might be. Do more podcasting and that kind of. That's how I believe I serve. So that's the part where the challenges, I guess you could say. But when I stay in that place of let me just be in service with what I do, yeah, it feels good. I don't feel worry. I don't feel anxiety. So yeah, it's hard not to want to stay in that place. That's kind of what keeps driving me forward.
You talk about the economy and what you think scares other people, right? I was listening to you. What scares you?
What scares me honestly is when I allow, and it happens, when I allow my ambition to make me lose sight of what's truly important. I did a mastermind down here in the DR recently, and we went through a 3-day sort of exercise, and there was a bunch of questions people had to ask themselves, kind of what I'd put together, and I went through it with them. I did it as well. And one of the questions I asked myself, or that we asked ourselves, was it's flash forward to the end of your life. What do you see, or what do you want to see around you? And I remember thinking like, well, I just want to see my wife and kids. Crazy, right? I don't want to see my one sheet. I don't want to see my podcast download counts. I don't want to see any of that stuff. I don't want to see my net worth. I just want to see my wife and I want to see my kids. So what scares me is that what I don't know is what end of life is, right? Like we think 90 or 85 or old and gray and grandkids and all of that. But what if it's a year from now? What if it's a week from now? What if it's 2 years, 10 years from now, right? Like when do you align with that? So what scares me is that sometimes my ambition makes me do things in the interest of maybe providing financial security or cushion for my family. So in my mind, protecting and serving them, when really all they want is my presence, and all I want to be is present for them. So what scares me is losing that sense of balance, and I've done it many times, and it's not good. It's not good for my relationship. It's not good for my kids. It's not good for me, who I am. A lot of ego in that. So what scares me is more that, like, losing sight of why I'm even doing what I do, or why I'm here, or who I'm really here to serve, or who I want to be around, and all of that. So I get a little bit worried about this, call it ego, ambition, this drive that I have, sometimes becoming, like getting in the driver's seat, if you will, of my life, and isolating the things that are truly important to me.
Did getting light help with some of that?
Yes and no. It did for a while. Yeah, it did for a while. Like, you get it's like anything, right? Like, life is never up and to the right. Like, you kind of like kind of bounces around as you're going. Um, It did, but then you gotta remember, like, getting light gave me validation. Validation's still not it's not like I'm done with validation. Validation still means something to me, right? People pleasing and getting people to validate what I do and all of that, and, yeah, of course, that's part of it. Like, ego is part of me, like, it is. So it's just, like I said before, that sliding scale of, like, what's in charge right now? Like, when I let my ego take over a little much, and it's not like it's obvious or intentional, like, you logic it, like, "No, no, actually, this makes sense because if I do this, it could give us this sort of, financial windfall or lifestyle win or whatever, and that's what my family wants." But, like, sliding myself that way is, it's just one of those things that, with awareness, you kind of try to keep in check, or try to keep a balance with, if you will. But no, I wouldn't say lightness got me sort of to a place where I've solved it. But, you know, for a period of time, sure, it gives me the ability not to feel stressed out by the job and all that comes with that. But then I just create a different kind of stress for myself, because I want to prove to myself and everybody else that I left my job, you can too. And then there goes the ego, right? The worst thing I feel like, from an ego perspective, that could happen to me is that, financially we take a major hit and I got to get a job. I mean, imagine that, right? For the ego, that's a major hit, because now the ego is all about the job, job, job. And now it's like, oh, hey, I'm over here and I'm on team authentic self now, ego is saying, right? Because authentic self gets us validation and we're doing even better. Yeah, let's keep going over here, right? So it's just like dragging me that way. So now, if all of a sudden something happened and I had to get a job, ego's like, over, whoa, 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 no, we can't do that. We've told all these people, look at your content, go delete your Instagram account, right? Like, because you've been saying this for years. So, that stuff is there, I guess.
You're a
But yeah,
scam.
yeah, exactly. But
But you know what, though, to the point of having to go back to the W-2, I remember reading in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week. He said, "Face your fears." He's like, "Write down, what are your greatest fears about leaving your job?" And when you set all that out, "What's the greatest fear about leaving your job?" "Well, I won't have income, or I'll lose money." He's like, "Well, what's the worst case scenario? You just go back to doing what you did before." If anybody is sitting there on the fence, and I'm sure there's people who are looking at Emerge while listening to this podcast, and, like, going to the website and looking at the cost. And what I would say to that, for me personally, because I've spent the money to join Emerge and to join Ascend, number one, it accelerates the process, like you said. Number two, the return on the investment, it, to me personally, is far greater than the money that it's cost me. What I would say is that if you're really serious about changing your life trajectory, then, invest in yourself, educate, getting the education for yourself. It's not always free. You could take the free path. It's going to take a lot longer, but if you really want to surround yourself with the community, it is definitely worth it.
you know what I would say? The best litmus test I have for whether somebody's at a point where, well, I can find things on YouTube or whatever, and for sure I do the same, right? Or, I'm at a point where, you know what, there's something missing here. Is like, ask yourself, are my problems, are they Googleable? Like, when you get past your problems being Googleable, that's when the community part comes in, right? Like, I know for me, like, I want to learn how to start a YouTube channel or whatever. Like, there's tons of stuff I can buy, mini courses or whatever. There's a bunch of stuff. But when I'm at a point where it's like, okay, I've got a YouTube channel, as an example, I don't know, but I've got a YouTube channel and I've done all the tactical stuff, but there's something I'm missing, and I'm not, there's got to be other ways. And I see this person, like, that's when you say, okay, I'm past Googleable. I'm past watching YouTube videos.
Well, you actually, without you even realizing it, excuse me, you just described me, because a year prior, I started learning about investment real estate. You get to the point where you have all this head knowledge, But until you can actually go and execute it, it doesn't really mean anything at all. And joining a community helps you to be accountable. I think that's a very important part of being part of a community is that accountability. I said I was going to do this thing and I didn't do it. Okay, so how does that look to these other people? To your point, community is where that grows. I can't express enough how much being part of the Emerge Supercharge, I can't express enough how much it has changed my life trajectory. And I am so grateful. And I hope people hear that. So, in closing, if you were stranded on a desert island and you could only take one book with you, what would it be?
Well, it's just funny. My brain went to like, well, this wouldn't help me much on that island unless I get rescued. But the book that I would, the book, it would probably be like How to Build a Boat or something like that. Now, but if I were stranded at one book, it would be Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. I love that book. I think it is. It's the better version of Think and Grow Rich. It's a more interesting story. So that's a big one. Although coming up fast is this one. I have it right here on my desk called 10, Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. Like that book, the first half of it especially, just like, wow, turns on a ton of light bulbs. So yeah, so between those two, but Outwitting the Devil is my go-to right now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Jamie, the usual closing. Where can we find you?
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm on Instagram at the Jamie Gruber. Tribe of Millionaires is my podcast. Would love for you to subscribe to that and take a listen. We got some really cool episodes on there. But yeah, at the Jamie Gruber on Instagram, you could DM me there, and yeah, that's me.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for your time. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thanks, Sue.
I want to thank you for listening to my podcast. I value your time with me because I realize you could be listening to someone else right now. If you got any value or think someone else can benefit from what you heard, please spread the word, hit subscribe, and check out my website at www.suesaller.com. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps and make today awesome, friends. Have a great day and God bless.